In the country, they say you work from can't to can't. Can't see it in the morning till I can't see it at night. That's how it was there. So I would get up. I was staying in my friend's apartment, and there's a coffee shop down the street, and I'd get up and I'd be out the door at 7:30, 8 in the morning, and I'd go get coffee. And the way it worked is I might make it back to the apartment at 9 or 10 o'clock at night. So a lot of times my phone was dead, and I didn't get a lot of pictures, but I certainly have some that I want to share with you. But for those who do not recognize this picture, this is the church building in Ivano-Frankivsk where we're working. So this is the auditorium over here on the far left, the big building. It is not finished. Now last year when we went, that was being used kind of as the warehouse for all the relief efforts. So they had pallets of stuff in there. That has now been cleaned out, so they're getting ready to finish the auditorium over there on the left. All these little triangles in the middle, those are apartments that we're working on, okay? And we have big plans for that, but I'll tell you that here in a minute. But that's the building. Now I want to talk about first how we got there and what it's like to travel over there. As you can imagine, because of the war going on between Russia and Ukraine, you cannot fly into Ukraine. So all the airports have been closed. Used to, back in the day, you could fly straight into Kyiv and jump on a train and be there a lot quicker. Now you have to go through Poland is our choice to go through. You can go through Romania and take like a southern route, but it's a little bit harder. So we choose to go through Poland. So this includes trains, planes, automobiles, yeah. Specifically this time a bus. So last year we did take a train from Warsaw, Poland into Ukraine. It's about an 18, 19-hour train ride. And I don't know how much you know about trains in Europe, especially trains in war-torn Europe. The air conditioning's not great. So we chose to take a bus this time. So my friend Andrew, who's been living over there, met me in Warsaw, and we took a bus into the country. Last year I took the northern route, so that's coming down from Amsterdam. So what we do is we fly from here. I fly Delta, so I fly Atlanta to Amsterdam, Amsterdam to Poland. Then we take a train or a bus from Poland. This time I flew through Italy. Love it or hate it, it was okay. They stole some stuff out of my bag. I'm still mad about that. So, but anyway, we went from Italy to Warsaw, and then Warsaw we took the bus into Ukraine. Where are we working in Ukraine? Well, we're working on the western side. There's Ivano-Frankivsk down here at the very bottom. So, I don't know how well you can see from the back, but right there in the middle by the E in Ukraine, that's Kyiv, that's the capital. Pretty much anything to the east of Kyiv has pretty well been taken. If not, it's very dangerous. So a lot of these things over here in the far east, so Donetsk, Crimea was annexed in 2014, Kherson, Dnipro, Kharkiv, all these in a big line. That's pretty much where the war line is. So we're pretty far from the front lines, if you will, but that does not mean that it's, quote, safe, but you're pretty far from the actual conflict. Lviv over here to the north of Ivano-Frankivsk, that used to be probably the, 6th or 7th biggest city in Ukraine. It is now, I believe, the second biggest city other than Kyiv, because everybody from the east has moved west, and the ones that have not left the country have kind of taken shelter in Lviv. We're working just south of Lviv, about 2 hours in Ivano-Frankivsk. So that's where we're at. Now I want to talk a little bit about the work, and I've broken the work down into several different sections, and we'll go through these one by one. So the work included the following: obviously preaching and teaching classes for the local congregation. My buddy usually takes good pictures while I'm preaching. I got one or two while I was preaching, but we also do night classes for the congregation. Last year we did the book of 1 Corinthians, and we crammed it all into our little trip, and it was very interesting, but we got through it. This time we decided to focus more on personal growth as opposed to congregational growth, so we did the book of James. That was a lot more digestible. So we did night classes for the congregation every night. We also did normal classes on church days. We taught in the local schools. That's something we did last year, but this year we opened it up a little bit. So last year we were just in the high school. This year we were also invited to King Daniel, and I know that's not how you spell Daniel, that's how they spell it. King Daniel University It's a large university of about 5,000 students. And for wartime Ukraine, that's pretty large. So we were able to teach in the universities. We were able to help with the spiritual and mental rehabilitation in the health centers. So last year we briefly mentioned that, but now it's full on and going, so I can speak freely about it. But we have been asked by the government to help with the spiritual rehabilitation of the country of Ukraine. So the church and the relief efforts that the Church of Christ has done throughout the war has been taken note of by the government, and they want our involvement. And that is really huge because, like many places in Europe, they have state religions in some places, and their state religion is Orthodox. But they have kind of bypassed the Orthodox and said, hey, you guys have done so much, we want your help in this. So we were invited to help with the rehabilitation centers. And then obviously we also did the humanitarian aid side of things. You guys can remember, I think it was 3 or 4 years ago. Time really flies, but we did buckets. We packed those buckets full of stuff. It was like basic house supplies, stuff for people who've lost everything. And we sent a pallet of those over to Ukraine. They're continuing to do that. They've never stopped doing that. So there's always humanitarian efforts going out, which is also encouraging because within those buckets and within any piece of humanitarian effort coming from the church in Ivano-Frankivsk, it has information about the Lord's Church. We have Bibles, we have Bible study material included with everything we do. So it's a double effort. It's humanitarian aid, and it's also spreading the gospel. So this is the works we're going to go through and kind of take a look at. We'll start with the church. This is a picture from last year, but most of the people in this picture are still there with a few exceptions. There's a few guys that are no longer there because they're either serving or they have left the country. But this is pretty well the congregation that meets there on a regular basis, give or take a few people. Here are some of the members. I don't know if you guys remember, maybe not, but the lady down here on the far right bottom, her name's Miss Valentina. She's the sweetest little old lady. She's in her mid-90s. When we showed up, she actually had just passed away. And so we were unable to spend a lot of time with her, but her example has been a staple in the congregation. In fact, last year, we have a bus route. So there's a little bus we drive around and pick up all the church members. And it would be cold, hot, raining, doesn't matter. She's standing on the corner with her little cow bucket hat, ready for church. She's ready to go. So she was super encouraging. Those are some of the other members. In the top, we have a guy named Volva and his wife, Natalie, and they are really helping out. I've been very impressed with them. They are both taking biblical classes to try to help encourage the congregation there. One of the biggest issues within the congregation is a lack of deep spiritual knowledge. So he has actually taken it upon himself to really expand his borders on understanding the Bible. And there were a couple of times in some of our classes where there would be a question, and if you've ever used a translator, it takes a while. So you have person A is asking the question, they're going to ask the question, the translator has to listen to it, repeat it back to me, I have to hear it, I have to give an answer, so it takes a long time. So there were several times where a question was asked, and Volva was able to just, by memory, say it in Ukrainian. So he's doing really great. So I'm really encouraged there with his progress and with the congregation's progress. These are some of the pictures from when I was preaching, and then also this is my favorite couple, probably in the world, Nikolai and Tatiana. And here they were arguing about, we were talking about how, husbands are supposed to love your wives, and she goes, I got you, And then I said, well, but wives are supposed to submit to your husbands. I got you. And so they were fighting, so I had to take a picture of that. But they're super sweet, and they're actually fairly new converts. I think they've only been converts for about 3 years. But they are at everything, and Miss Tatiana brings a notebook everywhere she goes, and as I'm talking, she'll go, and then later that notebook will come out, and she'll have 10 or 15 questions every night. So she's awesome. They're a great couple. Here are some of the classes that was a picture from last year from when I was preaching. That's my translator, Ina, there. This is a terrible picture of me because I'm like mid-conversation. But this is from one of our classes at night. What we did this year was a little bit different. So instead of using the building for our night classes, pretty much everybody lives in the city of Ivano-Frankivsk, and nobody has cars. Not a lot of people have cars. That's pretty true of most places in Europe, or a lot of places in Europe. They take trains and buses. So a lot of people don't have cars. Well, the building's about 25, 30 minutes from the city. And so instead of going and picking everybody up and driving them, and we also have to take 2 trips because there's so many people, which is a good problem, we decided to rent out for the week a little office space in the city. So everybody could just walk, or we just did a short bus trip to pick everybody up. So we had kind of like a little office space, and it was packed out, and most nights we had to move to a bigger office space free of charge because the people were very nice. And we also offered it online, so they were recording that. There's another one of our night classes, and that is from when I was preaching there. Now we move to the schools. So this is a picture of the high school, and you might recognize this picture. We met with the high school students. We also went to this university. And again, nobody gave me really any context as to what was going on. So 2 funny things. Number 1, I think that this is like a school like the high school, so it's probably fairly small. Nope, show up. They have a coffee shop inside. It has tons of students. They have marble statues. I don't know, did your school have marble statues? Mine didn't. This is their event center, their event hall. They were so excited to have a native English speaker there. That was such a big deal for them. And so they have given us liberty to teach as much as we want. So we're teaching English, but we're also allowed to talk about spiritual things. Basically, the way any one of my English classes go is I introduce myself, and then somebody in the class says, well, what are you doing here? It's like, oh, great question. Now let me tell you what I do. And then from that point on, I can talk about whatever I want to talk about related to my job and my faith and why I am in Ukraine. The high schools were kind of free reign. They don't care what you say. The universities are a little bit more buttoned up, and they're a little bit more reserved. But you, again, as long as you have the foot in the door, you can say whatever you want to say. So they have been very, very glad to have us, and that they'll let us go with anything. Now, funny thing. Oh, I do want to tell this funny thing. The first class I had there, we met with the director of linguistics at the university. He said, I've got a class for you. Here's the time. Just show up on this floor, and the teacher will guide you from there, and we're super excited to have you. These are our 4th-year students. They are almost translators themselves. They're very good at English. So I bebop up to the 5th floor. I walk in, and I'm like, hi, how are you? And introduce myself. And I said, okay, all right, well, let's talk about English. And I'm going through the basics of English because that's kind of where you start. And I'm, hey, how do you guys feel about silent letters? Or how do you have any trouble with antonyms, synonyms, and homonyms? I'm going through little stuff. And this is an hour-and-a-half long class. Hour-and-a-half long class. I get about 45 minutes in. And the teacher raises her hand in the back. And I was like, yeah. And she goes, can we talk about business? And I was like, yeah, what do you want to talk about? Yeah, let's talk about business. What do you want to? And then one of the kids starts laughing. She goes, did no one tell you this is a business English class? I was like, oh, that's great. Tell me that 45 minutes into the class when I've been talking about, do you know what this word means? So I felt a little small in that moment. But we still had a great class. And in fact, some of the students from that class have started attending services at Ivano-Frankivsk at the congregation. So it's been good all the way around. The head of linguistics, he has come and visited with us at the congregation there. Some of the teachers have started coming. It's been really, really beneficial. But the university was so professional that they decided to take this smoldering picture of me while I'm teaching. And yeah, they put it on their website. Yeah, no permission needed. Nope. And you think, okay, all right, that's not the worst picture in the world. Wait till you see the next one. Where's my other leg? I'm in the middle of a conversation, and I guess I had just crossed my legs, and I'm just going at it, and photographers are taking pictures of my peg leg. And again, posted on their website. Really good. But it was a good time. The university, again, for them to have a native English speaker is a huge deal. And so every teacher wanted to meet us. They wanted to have coffee with us, sit down and just chat with us. Because even the ones who are really trained in English, the best way to learn any language is immersion, right? And not a lot of them have had the opportunity to be in a native speaking English country. So this is the closest thing they got. And also the fact that we are there and we're doing this, basically for free. I mean, we are doing it for free, but we're doing it at no cost to them is huge. Because a lot of universities, like let's say in Kyiv, in the capital, they will hire people from America or from England or from some native English-speaking country to come over. Well, this is their way of bypassing that big expense and just getting it for free. And so anytime you are willing to go and speak English and just talk to these kids and talk to the teachers even, they want to take you up on that offer. And so they, the head of linguistics said, "Oh, I'm gonna buy you a house here. You're gonna move here," and all this other stuff. I haven't told Jamie that yet, but surprise. No, but anyway, they were super, super nice. Some of the high school kids, again, I didn't do great on getting pictures. This is a picture from last year. But a lot of the kids from this specific class we met with in the evenings. We met with them 2 or 3 times after our night classes with the church. So when I was saying sometimes you wouldn't get back till 8 or 9 at night, it just kept going. So we'd wake up, we'd go get coffee, we'd go get breakfast, and then we would go start doing either classes at the university or we would start doing relief efforts stuff. And then we would have night classes at 5 p.m. with the congregation. And then a lot of times we would meet with students or other people for Bible studies after that. And so it was just a full day, which I'm not complaining. I love it. It is tiring work, but it's awesome work. It's so rewarding. But here are some of the kids from the university last year. Okay, now let's talk about the rehabilitation centers. Okay, I don't want to be too, I don't want anything to sound negative, and I don't want to be too graphic, but this was one of the tougher things I've ever been a part of, just being blatantly honest. So we went to this rehabilitation. I did not get a lot of pictures from the inside because it was completely and totally inappropriate. This was a center for severely wounded soldiers. So most everybody in there was a double or triple or quadruple amputee because of IEDs and drones, and they were just, it was not good. But we were able to go and meet with them and kind of talk to the lady in charge of the center, and she kind of explained to us what was going on. We went to their arts and craft room because a lot of them just want people to talk to them and spend time with them. And so that's what we did. We were there with a high school class, which I think I have a picture of here in just a second. But we were there with a high school class that was reenacting a play for them. And so it was just, 5 or 6 high school kids, and they're just reading off scripts of a play. And it's just to encourage and get your mind off things. So we spent some time there. We also delivered Bibles, and we delivered, I think, 50 buckets of relief stuff for the soldiers. But one thing I will say in passing, I won't go too into detail, but I was talking to a guy who had lost most of his face due to explosion. And he just kind of looked at me and said, man, the hardest thing is I look scary now and my kids don't want to talk to me. And that's pretty tough. That is pretty tough. And so there was a lot of this that I didn't want to share and that it wasn't appropriate for me to share. But I will just say it was overall very positive, very positive. And so we're just starting to work with this specific hospital. We've delivered some medical supplies to them, some tables, things like that they were in need of, and also relief like the buckets and things of a smaller nature. But here are us delivering buckets. This is me trying to outperform my friend Andrew, who has longer arms than me. I failed. Here are the kids these kids were so impressive. They were high school kids sacrificing their own time. They're not getting paid $1 to be there. They are out of school. They just got done with school, and they go straight to this hospital to sit with these soldiers and to do arts and crafts and to occupy their time. And that is awesome. So in this back wall here, they had all sorts of pottery. There's a guitar over there in the corner, a keyboard. They had I don't know if it's in this picture, but they had like little paper mache like characters that they were making, and they were letting the soldiers make these paper mache characters and kind of paint their feelings and expressions onto these characters, and just kind of talking it through with them, like, why did you give this character a sad face? And just it was super neat. And these were awesome kids. But we were there for that. This is another thing in another room that I was able to get one picture of because there was no people in it. But a lady comes to the hospital and sits down with each soldier individually and just does a pencil sketch and sits there and does a portrait of the soldier. And then they're able to display it on the wall in there. So really, a lot of these rehabilitation centers, people might ask, well, these men need serious psychological examination and help. And I agree. But first and foremost, they need somebody to just sit with them and just to let them know that you care. I know we've talked about it in the past, but if you look at Job, when Job loses everything, I think his 3 friends did the best thing they could have done. For the first several days, they sat with him and didn't say a word, just having presence there. So just going and hanging out with people. Of course, we delivered Bibles, relief, but first we got to build a rapport with some of these guys and just sit with them and say, like, hey, what do you like to do for fun? Do you like music? What kind of music do you listen? Do you watch movies? Do you just start with the basics. So again, this is part of the rehabilitation center. The lady over here in the middle, that is the one who's kind of spearheading it. She is not a member of the church, but all of the things we're doing on the humanitarian aid and rehabilitation, that's the goal. With everything we do, that's the end goal. It's not humanitarian aid for the sake of, just giving out stuff. It is, everything has a purpose, and it is spiritually minded. Of course, we're trying to help people, but we're not just trying to help people physically. We're trying to help them spiritually. So we're hoping that women like this and some of these high school students and some of these soldiers will become Christians in the future, Lord willing. Then we have the frontline relief. Again, last year we did go to Kyiv. We decided not to this year. I don't know if I told this story from the pulpit, at least last year, but we did have some fire fights and stuff like that. We had some action, is what they'd call it, last year. So we had some Russian drones land pretty close to where we were, and we had bombings while we were in Kyiv last year. So we decided not to go to Kyiv this year, but we did send, there's some NGOs, non-government organizations that collect our buckets of relief and food and basic supplies, and they deliver it once a week to all the front lines. So they go on their own. They asked if I wanted to go with them. I was like, oh man. It's like, hey, you want to go to the front lines with us? We have an extra flak jacket and a helmet. And I'm like, how am I going to explain that to Jamie? Hey, honey, where are you? Well, don't look at my locations. So they do take these to the front line. And again, these are not associated with the government. They're just helping out, their own time, their own money, and we've been able to help out tremendously because we have tons of relief, and so they are starting to even worship with us. The guy over here by me, he's even visited several times at the congregation there, and they are doing this every week, going to the worst places. Some of the relief, these are from the front line. These are different soldiers and battalions. As you can see here, these are the current buckets we have. I think when we sent buckets, we had Home Depot buckets, but these are the current buckets they have. Okay, on those buckets, it has information about the church. There's a little church building on the front of that bucket, and it talks about the church, and inside that bucket, you will find Bibles, you will find Bible study material. There's contact information for the church. Everything you need to get in contact with the right people is on those. So this is kind of the stuff we're sending over there to the front lines. It's food, it's blankets, it's coats, it's basic supplies, but it's stuff that they need desperately. And not only the soldiers, because you got to keep in mind, a lot of people are still in these places. An older couple that maybe cannot travel, well, guess what? They just had to stay in their house. There's no stores open. There's no, all the business is left. You're just stuck in your house in a city halfway across the country that's getting bombed every day. They don't have any way to survive, you know. And so this is not just for soldiers. It's for anybody they come in contact with that has a need. So these people are really, really suffering, especially in the east. Okay, so here's some more of these battalions, some of these small army groups, and some of the relief they got. They sent us all sorts of pictures, but they were just so happy to have just basic supplies. The coolest thing I've ever gotten in my entire life cost me $0. One of the soldiers gave me a patch off of their uniform. So that's in my office, so don't steal it. It means a lot to me. Yep, so this is another thing. Somebody had donated a generator. That was not us, but somebody did donate that generator for them. But now we got to talk about some of the opportunities, and this is a picture from last year. Okay, all right, so is the war still going on? Yes. Is it still dangerous? Yes, in some parts. But that being said, I think this is one of the best opportunities for the country right now. Okay, if you look at the book of 1 Corinthians, why was Corinth so important? And we've looked at this in times past. But if you look at a map of Greece, you have mainland Greece, and then you have a little island, a peninsula underneath it. It's called the Isthmian Peninsula. The only thing that connected this giant peninsula and mainland Greece was a little town called Corinth. Okay, to the right of Corinth and to the left of Corinth, there are two seas, the Aegean and the Ionian seas. So Corinth is sitting in the middle of everything. If you have any kind of land trade between the Isthmian Peninsula and mainland Greece, you got to go through Corinth. If you want to, instead of sailing around the entire world to get to this other sea, if you want to put your boat on rollers and go across land, you have to go through Corinth to connect these two seas. So it's a major trade route. That's why Corinth is so important. So when Paul writes to the church in Corinthians, in 1 Corinthians, and says, I want you to be strong, I don't want you to be divided, it's because the whole world is taking note of what's happening in Corinth. All sorts of foot traffic. Now, with this war that's going on right now in Ukraine, especially young men who did not want to serve, they have fled to countries all over Europe. You've got people, a ton of Ukrainians in America. You've got a ton of Ukrainians in the UK. You have Ukrainians in Germany, a lot in Poland, some in Italy, some in France. They are all over Europe. And as this war starts to tail off and looks like it's going to end hopefully soon, you're going to have people coming back to Ukraine. Now, why is that important? Because for the last 3 years, they've had neighbors. They've had coworkers. They've had bosses. They've met people at the gym. They've made contacts with people all over Europe. They have Italian neighbors and French neighbors and neighbors over in the UK that they still have communication with. And if we can give them a solid foundation to land back on when they get back to the country, they could possibly spread the gospel all over Europe. This is a huge opportunity. And to me, it feels just like Corinth and how important Corinth was because of the foot traffic. Same goes with Ukraine. And Ukraine is right next to Romania. It's right next to Poland, to Hungary, to so many other little countries that we could potentially have the church spreading like wildfire in the next coming years. So it is very important. That's why we're a part of this work. That's why I understand, a lot of people say, well, why are you going to a war, a place experiencing war? Because that's how important it is. Okay, I genuinely believe that. I wouldn't say it if I didn't believe it. I think this is a very unique opportunity. I think this is a special time for this country to potentially have a ripple effect throughout the whole of Europe. Another opportunity based on that that we're working on right now is working with the World Bible Institute. It's a group out of Texas. Remember I showed you those little triangle apartments in the building? Okay, what we have talked about doing with this organization is they're going to go ahead and finish the building out, which includes finishing all these apartments, and they want to put in a preaching school. They want to put a preaching school in at Ivano-Frankivsk. Okay, that is huge because not only are you giving the the people a good, solid education to get back to. But imagine if you're a 19-year-old, 18-year-old young man. You left the country when you were 16. You're coming back. You don't have a job. You're kind of looking for something to do. And you have an opportunity to go to school and have a home. Don't have to worry about a roof over your head. You don't have to worry about rebuilding the shambles that used to be your home. You can go straight to a preaching school, and then from there you can go out and spread the gospel. So we're giving people a place to stay and a thing to do. We're giving them an opportunity for an occupation. So we're talking about putting in a school. We're still ironing out all the details on this. So, of course, it'll take some time. But here are some of the people that are going to be involved in it. So this couple here, right here, and right here, they are native Ukrainians. They are living in Poland and Warsaw right now. That's their son right here in the middle. They are going to possibly work with us. They've been both studying at Bear Valley, the preaching school out of Denver, Colorado. So they are actually getting a really solid education, and they're possibly going to be studying with us. Tanya over here in the middle, this is John Kackelman's primary translator. She's agreed to be the secretary. Gif, or Andrew, this is one of my buddies that I grew up with. He is living in Ivano-Frankivsk. He's an American. He's kind of oversee the day-to-day stuff with the school. Perry Baker over here, his son works for Apologetics Press. He is a native Canadian, but he's actually from Alabama now. But he wants to help out with it, and they've asked if I could help out with organizing classes and things of that such. So that is one of the big opportunities right now. Of course, you have the rehabilitation centers and all the ties that we're making in the community, and it's amazing to see how interested and open people are to hearing the gospel. I was telling somebody about it not too long ago, and I said the amazing thing about it is when you are sitting in a restaurant and you just so happen to speak English, the waiter, somebody sitting next to you, they might come over and just say, "You speak English, where are you from? Why are you here?" And you automatically start off by saying, "Okay, well, I'm not getting anything from being here. Nobody's paying me to be here, but I'm here to spread the gospel." And they immediately respect that, and they understand that it's important to you. Kind of like how the church spread in the first century. It spread through persecution, and you got to really know and be convicted on what you're saying if you're willing to be persecuted for it. Well, if you're willing to travel halfway across the world into an area that's not so great right now, it is an immediate telltale sign that you're convicted in what you're saying, and I want to hear about what you have to say. So it's an awesome opportunity. Now, all that being said, I want you to look at Acts chapter 9 with me. Before we close out, I want you to go to Acts chapter 9 with me. We were just studying Acts 9 in our teen class on Sunday mornings, and I love what this has to say. So if you look at the conversion of Saul, as we know him, Saul. So in verse number 15, Ananias gets the call to go to Saul. Verse 15, it says, "Go, for he is a chosen instrument," some versions might say vessel. "He's a chosen instrument of mine to carry my name before the Gentiles and the kings and the children of Israel. For I will show him how much he must suffer for the sake of my name." So Ananias departed, entered the house, and laying his hands on him, said, "Brother Saul, the Lord Jesus, who appeared to you on the road by which you came, has sent me so that you may regain your sight and be filled with the Holy Spirit." And immediately something like scales fell from his eyes, and he regained his sight. Then he rose and was baptized, and taking food, he was strengthened. Okay, I want you to watch the end of verse 19 and pay very close attention to the beginning of verse 20. "For some days he was with the disciples at Damascus, and immediately he proclaimed Jesus in the synagogue, saying, 'He is the Son of God.'" Okay.